My name is Mike Jacobs. I'm the president of the Bergen County School Boards Association, and I'd like to welcome all of you this evening.
This meeting is being recorded.
In 2024, I hope everybody had a great reorganization, and at this time, please rise and join me in our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks for the flag, Rob. Okay, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge some of our guests. Dr. Tom Connors, NJSBA's Vice President of Finance. Barry Fitzgerald, NJSBA's Vice President of County Activities. Got him. And two of my counterparts, Dr. James Albrill, President of BCASA, the Bergen County Association of School Administrators, and my good friend Floro Villanueva, President of BC ASBO, the Bergen County Association of School Business Officials. Welcome to all of you. You know, considering the educational climate in Bergen County, I think tonight's program is a perfect fit. And I'm sure you'll have quite a few takeaways to bring back to your districts. But going a little bit off on a tangent, I'd like to finish my remarks briefing all of you on what BCSBA's Executive Committee has been doing. We'll be starting to think about our programming for next year, and we invite all of you to let us know what you, our members, want as far as topics. So please email me at pres.bcsba@gmail.com, and I'll put that in the chat. Secondly, our grassroots advocacy for sustainable funding for school-based mentoring is doing exceptionally well. We have our certified resolutions. We have visited our Bergen County legislatures, and we're getting closer and closer to the door of the legislature. And lastly, we'll be looking at sponsorship opportunities for our association. So therefore, our evening's first order of business is I'd like to invite Bergen County's Executive Superintendent, Lou Delisio, to give us his DOE report. Lou, it's yours.
Thank you, Mike, and always thank you for welcoming me. Unfortunately, I didn't get the opportunity to attend the January meeting. I had an untimely dental surgery, which I guess there is no good time for dental surgery, but it happened to coincide with the January meeting. So I want to begin this evening by welcoming the newly elected board members and those who are newly re-elected, as well as all board members who are joining us tonight. And again, I always like to start out by saying that I am not only a former board member, but I am currently, by statute, a board member at the Bergen County Technical Schools and Bergen County Special Services. So I fully appreciate your commitment to your local district and honor your service. The county office, what's going on lately in the county office is we are in the midst of our CUSAC reviews for cohort 2 districts. And what that means for board members that are new here with us this evening is the county is divided up into 3 equal sections that get monitored once every 3 years. We're currently monitoring this year cohort 2 districts, and this is a particularly unique cohort because many of these districts, due to several circumstances, have not been monitored in a comprehensive review for almost a decade. So we've completed about 10 of the 25 that were scheduled to review this year. And board members, especially those that are new to this venue, you'll be receiving a report from your superintendent, from your administrators, usually sometime in the summer. Very important process. Our job at the county office is to ensure that school districts are in compliance with New Jersey Department of Education statutes and codes. However, more importantly, and I always like to share this, with the administrators when we go out to do a review. More importantly is the county team is here to help you be in compliance. We spend a lot of time in a district reviewing many aspects of governance and personnel and instruction and program, fiscal, and providing guidance for districts on how they can do better at what they do. Additionally, board members, you will be hearing, and we just had a little bit of a discussion with it with Jesse. Thank you, Jesse, for offering that information that you did. But very soon, folks, you'll be hearing from your administrators who are in the process of, or will be very shortly in the process of developing the 2024-25 school budget. That's an integral part of what you do as a board member, is to make sure that your district has the funding that it needs to give each student in your district the best quality of education that you can provide. I have, for about 2 years now, I've been telling board members at the Bergen County School Boards Associated meetings that budgets are getting more and more difficult, folks. The S2 law, which was designed to provide a level playing field across the state in terms of funding, is coming to an end this year after this budget cycle. During the course of that 7-year implementation, Bergen County has done extremely well, only because we were so underfunded prior to the S2 law. But that funding, or that excess funding, is coming to an end. Of course, we're all aware that federal funds are coming to an end. They must be exhausted or spent by September 2024. So this is going to be a tough budget cycle. The next couple are going to be difficult budget cycles. It's going to take due diligence on your part to ensure that your students, the children in your community, are getting the quality education that they have been getting and that they so deserve. Especially to new board members, February is financial disclosure statement month. So at some point during the course of this month, you will be hearing from your board secretary, who's usually your business administrator. They will be providing a link to an electronic forms for you to file your financial disclosure statements. It sounds scary, folks, and most people are really very private about their income sources. However, I assure you, it's not detailed. They don't ask you for numbers of, or what your compensation is. What the Department of Ed, the state of New Jersey, is monitoring is the sources of income to ensure that there's not a conflict between what you do for a living and what your role is as a board member. It's very important that you complete that financial disclosure statement in its entirety. It does get reviewed at my office. It will get returned to you if it's not completed appropriately. And it is also part of the governance district performance review in the QSAC monitoring process. So please, you might think your business administrator, who, again, board secretary, might be after you. There is a deadline to submit the financial disclosure statement. It's usually April 30th. The forms are again available electronically at some time in February. So very shortly they'll be released, and you'll be hearing from your business administrator / board secretary. It's a requirement for every Board of Education member to complete that. So I want to give you a heads up on that. On a little bit of a, not a little more than a little bit, on a sad note, I shared this with the superintendents in Bergen County today. I shared it with my superiors at the Department of Education. Out at the county office, we tragically lost our certification specialist, Lori Hoffman, who's been working in the county office in Bergen for 40 plus years. She had a very unfortunate and serious medical event last week, and unfortunately did not survive it. It's a tremendous loss for school districts in Bergen County because Lori was the expert, not only the expert in Bergen County, but the expert throughout New Jersey on the certification process and has helped literally tens of thousands of aspiring educators attain their certification. It's a huge loss and will be a huge void in my office. And you know, I always like to say that no one is irreplaceable, but I may have to rethink that in Lori's case. She had so much experience. The people in Trenton who direct the Office of License and Certification would reach out to Lori for guidance. So it's very unfortunate. It was very unexpected, very sudden. And I know many of board members have heard of, maybe not met, but have heard of Lori Hoffman and the certification process in Bergen, which is second to none, as is the education in Bergen County, second to none in New Jersey. So I wanted to share that with you. And lastly, Mike, as always, I want to always offer my services to Board of Education members with the understanding, of course, that I don't have the authority to direct Board of Education actions, but I do have 15 plus years of experience as a board member, as a superintendent, as a county superintendent, and I'm always willing to have a conversation and share my experience with Board of Education members to help them help their children in their district. Mike, thank you again for having me here. It's always an honor to address this group, and I feel like I'm home. So thank you again.
Mike, you're muted. Mike, you're muted. Mike, you're muted.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Lou, thank you for everything you do for Bergen County. And at this point, I'd like to invite Dr. Tom Connors to deliver his reading from the NJSBA officers. Dr. Tom.
Well, thank you, President Jacobs. Good evening. I'm Dr. Tom Connors, 15-year member of the Piscataway Township Board of Education in Middlesex County. I want to thank everyone who's on the virtual meeting tonight. Your participation demonstrates the value you place on your professional development as a local school board member. I want to tell you about one of the New Jersey School Board's resources that's available to all members at no cost. The resources are research and data reports. New Jersey School Board studies educational issues and trends and collects data on school elections and school construction bond issues. You can find the most recent research from sustainable schools to school security and student health and wellness on the New Jersey School Board's website by clicking on the News and Information tab on the homepage, and then scrolling down to the Research tab. There you will find two categories, projects and data. When you click projects, you can read the most recent research from digital divide to school security, firearm safety, educational opportunities for the career-focused learner, and more. When you click on data, you'll find information on annual election statistics and on construction bond issue questions. Candidate statistics is a bird's eye view of the candidate trends over the years, including the ratio of candidates to available seats, incumbents as a percentage, and the number of uncontested seats and no petitions filed. The information on the construction covers a referenda results for each special school election and is often used by districts who are considering an election bond question. For more information on the resource, contact Anne Marie Smith, Assistant Editor, Communications Department at amsmith@njsba.org. Lastly, thank you for your service to your local school districts and your support of the New Jersey School Boards Association. Your commitment and continued dedication is what makes us strong. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Tom. At this point, I'd like to invite Michael Sprague, our delegate to NJSBA's Board of Directors, with his BOD report. Mike.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We did have a meeting on January 5. So the first thing that was discussed was the fact that it was Board Appreciation Month. So it's a little late, but to give this report on that topic. But nonetheless, the New Jersey School Board Association was recognized by the Department of Education on behalf of all the members, board members throughout the state, in appreciation of their efforts in conjunction with School Board Appreciation Month. And New Jersey School Board Association also put out on social media, a video thanking members. And also you may have seen in school board notes last month, the same type of thank you to the members for their service to their boards throughout the state. Basically, if you recall, I guess a year and a half or 2 years ago, for the first time in more than a decade, New Jersey school boards raised their rates that they assess to the different districts. And we're now in the process of them spending the additional funds that they are receiving. And primarily this money is going towards personnel. So in the January meeting, and some of these positions may have been filled by now, but in the January meeting, senior policy manager position was, they were looking to fill a legal counsel position, administrative assistant for legal and labor policy, and additional field representatives. I reported previously that they had already hired a number of new field representatives to try to lighten the load of the existing reps so that additional services could be provided to the various boards. January 24th and 25th, you may have seen in notes, they kicked off this search for a deputy director for New Jersey school boards. And that was done by way of 2 town hall meetings on those evenings. And that process is ongoing. It was reported that they were, I think, $1,400 short of getting 100% of the dues in for the current year. So, they're ready to go to move forward with all their new initiatives and the new individuals who are coming on board. I reported previously about the BA in residence and so forth. So again, there's a lot of new resources that are available to us as local boards through New Jersey School Board Association. Tom just pointed out one. There's also up and running now is a negotiation portal where you can get information on negotiation information from boards throughout the state. So I would just urge you all to take advantage of that. And that's all I have at this time. Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Mike. Great report. And now we're going to hear from my good friend, Jesse Young, NJSBA's legislative advocate. Jess? Is he on? There he is.
Yep. All right. President Jacobs, can you just confirm you can see the screen I'm sharing?
Yes,
with
we
my
can.
Presentation. Great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Jesse Young. I'm a legislative advocate here in the Government Relations Department at NJSBA. And I'm really excited tonight to bring you some updates on education news out of the state legislature and the Murphy administration. I don't want to take up too much of your time. You've got the best of the best in Vince on your program tonight. So I'm going to do my best to be as brief as I can and follow Mr. Serra's constant direction to me to keep my update to about 5 minutes. So for sake of time, I'm going to skip around a lot. I'm not going to touch on every bullet you see on every slide. I'm going to skip around a lot, but we will be sending out the slides to everyone who registered for this meeting. So you'll have a chance to take a look at them more closely and follow up with any questions that you might have. Our contact information is on the last slide as well. So I'm going to jump in and go over some recent education bills that Governor Murphy has signed into law. And I'll start with a new law regarding security drills and students with disabilities. This new law essentially requires school districts to take certain steps to ensure that your students with disabilities are fully able to participate in any of your security drilling and security protocol, and that, God forbid, in the event of an actual security emergency, that the school district has the resources and training it needs to provide for the students with disabilities in the event of a security emergency. So it requires things like students with disabilities to participate in your monthly security drills. It requires the New Jersey DOE to provide training to your school safety specialists on how to meet the needs of students with disabilities during security events. And then that training that the DOE provides your security specialists could then be turnkeyed, and your school security specialist can provide training to other district staff on local procedures for meeting the needs of students with disabilities during security drills or actual security events. Next, I'm going to skip to a staffing shortage bill that the governor signed into law, certification pathway for paraprofessionals. This one requires the DOE to create a pathway to instructional certifications, so teacher certification for folks who are working as paraprofessionals in public schools. The idea here is to recognize that paraprofessionals have meaningful and relevant experience working with students, being a part of your school community, and that experience and those skills should be honored in some way to try to expedite the certification process as much as possible. So maybe things like counting their experience as paraprofessionals towards the requirements for certification if the experience meets, those specific certification requirements. So this is just designed to try to reduce the burdens for paraprofessionals to get fully certified as teachers. Next, a school meal and student nutrition bill. The governor signed into law a temporary expansion of free school lunch and a permanent expansion of free school breakfast. So what this new law does is it says that next school year, 24-25, the threshold for eligibility for free school lunch will be increased from 200% of the federal poverty level, which is what it is now, up to 225% of the federal poverty level. And that expansion of free school lunch will be go into effect next year and will only last that one school year. It's a temporary expansion of free school lunch. And then on the free school breakfast side, there's a permanent increase of eligibility for free school breakfast, the same eligibility up to 225% of the federal poverty level. And then, importantly, I should note that the cost of providing those additional free school meals to this expanded group of students will be paid by the state. So just like your current free school meal program, where the cost of the meal gets reimbursed by the state will continue to reimburse you for the cost of these additional school meals that you'll be providing under this new law. All right, next, school funding and finance bill that the governor signed into law, eliminating the April budget vote. So this new law says that for a school district with an April election, that district would no longer has to get voter approval for your budget if the budget is within the 2% property tax levy growth cap. So essentially, your April districts are treated just like your November districts. Can adopt a budget without voter approval as long as that budget is under the 2% cap. Of course, if a district does want to go above the 2% cap, whether you're April or November, for that you do have to get voter approval. But for just the kind of your base below the cap budget, April districts would no longer have to get voter approval for that. All right, next, school facilities bill that the governor signed into law, school facilities project reform. This is a long one. It's an 80-page bill. I can probably spend an hour just on all the changes this bill makes to the school facilities project application process, and some other kind of rules of how school facilities are funded. The one provision that I'll highlight here is it does create a mechanism for charter schools to receive public funds for facilities projects. It creates a loan program in the EDA, that's the Economic Development Authority, where the EDA will now be authorized to provide loans to charter schools to finance their school facilities projects. The idea here, or the design of that loan program, is that eventually it's intended to become self-sustaining, where in the kind of lead up years, the state would need to appropriate public funds to the EDA to make those loans. Eventually, the idea is that as the EDA makes those loans and the charters start paying them back, the payment the EDA gets from the charters on those loans can be used to finance future loans, and the program can become self-sustaining, so it no longer requires the infusion of public funds kind of at some point down the line. Student Learning and Achievement Bill, the governor signed into law, a temporary FAFSA graduation requirement. So under this new law, starting with current juniors, so that's the class of 2025, and then for 2 cohorts after that, so class of 25, 26, and 27, those graduation cohorts will have to complete a financial aid application, for example, the FAFSA, as a requirement for their high school diploma. And I should note the link you see under that bullet on this slide is a data sharing agreement that HESA provided. That's the Higher Education Student Assistance Authority. They provided a template data sharing agreement that districts can fill out to ensure that you're able to receive from the state lists of your students that have completed FAFSA and those who haven't. So for purposes of enforcing that graduation requirement, so you know which students have done it, there is a data sharing agreement template that we link to in the slides. This next slide provides some information on bills that the governor vetoed so that he did not sign into law. I'm going to skip this for sake of time. This next slide provides some other lame duck action. So bills that the legislature acted on at the end of their last session. But again, these bills did not get signed into law. So I'm going to skip this for the sake of time. Some bills that the legislature in this session has considered, a few different ones here. One that I'll highlight is eliminating the census method of special education aid. So under this bill, so again, this was not signed into law. It was just the Senate Education Committee just approved it in January. So it's only the first step of the process. But what that bill would do is instead of the current method in SFRA of funding special education costs referred to as the census method, instead of that method, under this bill, districts would be funded based on their actual special education enrollment. So you would get funded based on your actual number of special ed students times the average excess cost of about $20,000 right now. And then another bill that a committee just approved earlier this month, and again, just the first step in the process, not signed into law yet, but November election second question. So under this bill, a November district would be able to put up a separate proposal, so a proposal to override the 2% cap, and you would be able to use those funds that you raise in that question in the subsequent budget year. So right, under current law, if you do a separate proposal, you can only raise funds for that school year, for the current budget year. This bill would eliminate that restriction and say you can raise funds for the next budget year as a separate proposal. All right, and then I'm gonna skip the rest of the legislative section and just go to straight New Jersey Department of Education news. I should mention that the Governor Murphy recently announced his intent to nominate Kevin Damer to serve as the next Commissioner of Education. Of course, Commissioner Alan McMillan retired as of the 1st of this month, and so the governor did announce that Kevin Damer will be his nominee as the next commissioner. Who had a long career at DOE, last serving as the Assistant Commissioner of Finance, and who currently serves as the Executive Director of the Heldrich Center of Workforce Development over at Rutgers. I'm going to skip the rest of this DOE news section for time, and then our contact information is there on the last slide. Thank you guys so much.
Bessie, thank you very much. And at this point, our program this evening is, as community leaders, how do we promote community engagement in times of charged emotions? It's all about the trust. Now, before he begins, I'd like to say a little bit about my good friend, Vincent DeLucia. Vince has more than 40 years of experience in education. After earning his master's degree in instruction as well in administration and supervision in 1994, Vincent was among the first 79 teachers in the United States to achieve national board certification. He's held various education roles in classrooms, administration, and school district leadership. Current professional learning that he facilitates includes inherent bias, bias and prejudice, YSEL and addressing inherent bias, microaggressions in the workplace, and tonight's program, Leadership in Turbulent Times. Now, a little bit of a surprise I found out about Vincent. He was elected the mayor of South Brunswick. And as the mayor, his accomplishments included addressing the emotional health of children, preserving farms, developing and implementing a funding mechanism for open space preservation, and probably the most important, integrity in local government. Vince initiated an FBI investigation that led to the conviction and incarceration of an aide to the NJ state senator in 1997 for attempting to bribe him to rezone property. So do me a favor, please keep this to yourselves. Vince wore a wire for 7 years. So again, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Vincent DeLucia.
Thank you, Mike. Give me a moment, please, to share my screen, folks. Let's see.
Perfect.
You guys can see it?
Oh, don't do that. Hit cancel.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this one off. Here we go. There we go. Well, good evening, everybody. It's very, I live down the shore, but it's good to be in my home county. My grandparents moved from Greenwich Village to Bergen County in 1921. And I grew up in Bergen County, and my dad was a principal in the city of Hackensack. My mom was a reading specialist in Rutherford and a Fulbright scholar, where she actually studied the reading programs in China for a month way back in the 90s in order to share that information not only with New Jersey, but really with the rest of our state as well. This evening, we're going to have a conversation. Mike and I have talked about it. I'm going to share some of the turbulent times that I experienced, but more importantly, really some of the proactive tips in order to address these times, which are difficult, to say the least. Okay.
I think you have to hit slideshow again. It didn't go through.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, let's do it again. I'm gonna reboot it.
Beautiful. Perfect.
Okay. We're good. And we're not moving forward. Why is this jammed?
Better click on the screen once. With your mouse. Click on the screen once with your mouse.
Say it again.
Click on the screen once with your mouse.
Just did.
Try one more. Like, click where Dwight E. Eisenhower is. Yeah, click there.
Yeah, it's not moving. This has not happened before.
Bergen County. Yeah, try spacebar.
Somebody said the space bar.
Yeah, not working. Let me try it one more time to cut it out and start over. Is there another click, Rob? I've never had this happen before.
Weird. Try to hit your escape button on your keyboard.
Okay.
I can do anything.
Let me try it a different way.
Yeah, okay, good. But yep.
All right, let's try it this way. This is weird. Let me. Here, I'm going to do it a different way, folks. I
Perfect.
apologize. We're going to go through it a different way. That's all.
Perfect.
Sorry for that delay. Well, anyway, as I was saying, it's good to be back home. I really have to credit the educators in Bergen County, not only for myself, but for my family, because of our successes. So, Dr. Delicio, you are leading a terrific county for sure.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's not really me, though. It's our educators.
I understand, but it's always about leadership. It's always about leadership.
Thank you. Very kind.
Just for our newer board members, it was just a few weeks ago that they took this oath or a similar oath. This is the one that is prescribed in our state constitution, although local districts and local municipalities can use a modified one. But when I was first elected to office in 1988, took a seat in 1989. When I sat at that dais, it was a very different responsibility I didn't consider when I was in the audience. The responsibility was real, and taking that oath is something that I know you took seriously, and I continue to take seriously. I'm going to ask a rhetorical question, which is, once taken, does an oath of office expire? Does your oath of office help guide you in your actions? The reason I ask is because of the experiences that I did have, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. But even before we get there, I really want to just take a moment. This is what we're focusing on as an educational community. You know, schools are handmaidens to our economy. What happens in our schools is the foundation for academic as well as life success, and also contributes to financial success. And sometimes we get caught in the specific tech skills and other skills that individuals need to be successful in a variety of careers. But there's been a common theme over the last 10 years. And what that common theme is, coming from both Forbes magazine, Fortune magazine, as well as from the NEA, are that these are the 13 skills, regardless of career, that our kids today need to be successful in this century. They need to be curious. They need to learn continuously. They need to have critical thinking skills, emotional intelligence, and empathy. And the reason for that is number 6, collaboration. We no longer work in isolation. They need to be flexible. They need to have leadership skills. They need to be able to manage their time, be literate in digital literacy and data, and they need to be good communicators, and that's specifically with storytelling. And I share that with you because that really needs to be the overarching goal of our work, and it clearly is of my work. I also want to, this is a true story, but it's a good metaphor for what's happening in across the country today. My wife and I have been planning a cross-country trip. We want to take a few weeks. We want to see the country. We've been together over 20 years. We've never taken this trip together. I took it in my youth, as did she. I have a preference to go a northern route. My reasoning is that I don't want to be in Wyoming in late August when it's 30 degrees camping. I want to do that at the beginning. She wants to stop and see family in Arizona, and our ultimate goal is we have very close friends in LA. What we've learned, and it's an application, quite frankly, to what's happening at board tables and township committee and town government tables. There's not one way to achieve a goal. There are multiple ways, all of which are valid. So what we're doing now, it's easy with just 2, is we're negotiating our route. What I'm suggesting is that we need to be mindful that there are many different pathways, many different processes to achieve a goal. And those are the challenges happening all over the place. They clearly happen in schools and classrooms as well. As I mentioned, as Mike said, I have extensive experience in education. I'm most proud of being nationally board certified. Quite frankly, I was a teacher for 10 years before I became nationally board certified, and I didn't become a real teacher until I was nationally board certified. There's a significant amount of research that demonstrates that when one has a national board certification, the level of instruction is just a little bit different. I'm not saying that other teachers aren't great, but this is just a little bit different. It's no different than going to a board certified doctor versus a doctor who's not board certified. But as you can see, I've had a variety of experiences at the school level, as well as at the district level. And that's really what really kind of gives some of my background to do this. In both of my, I've been in 2 districts, both South Brunswick and North Brunswick, extended times in each one. In both districts, part of my responsibilities was being the PIO, Public Information Officer. It was also designing, those campaigns for school referenda, as well as for school budgets in those days. In the 1990s, in South Brunswick, we had 5 building referenda within 6 years. You'll see in a few moments how rapidly that township expanded and how it grew. But even at the local level, we had several issues in both districts where we had to address families to ensure that their kids were safe. We're being lockdowns for weapons. We call it the turkey shooter. There was a gentleman standing behind our high school in North Brunswick shooting turkeys in the air. The most difficult one was bed bugs. When 2 of our schools were infested, how could we reduce the understandable concern of our families? And it was about transparency. It was about being fully disclosing information, among other things. So when I speak about some of the strategies to communicate with our families, with our communities, it's based on mistakes that were made that weren't successful, and then learning from those mistakes as districts and as individuals. When I was in office, it was the hot anger, emotional outbursts at public meetings were significant. There were threats of violence from the podium in the community and beyond. We had 300 to 500 community members attending hearings on land use in the community. And it was not uncommon for me to get a 3 a.m. phone call from a payphone in a carding company, just hanging up, because of some of the efforts that I'll talk about in a little bit. And there were whisper campaigns, all designed to undermine my stature in the community and undermine me as an educator, and also to undermine the policies that I was collaborating with my community and with my fellow board members in order to implement. This is just from over the last 6 or 7 months, just a handful of things in our state and beyond, be it at the federal level in the U.S. Senate, Hackensack trustees in Bergen, Middletown, and Monmouth, Basking Ridge, and in Somerset. Unfortunately, what we are seeing is hot anger instead of focusing on the ways we can collaborate together in a peaceful way to find conclusions. So South Brunswick is located as exit 8A on the New Jersey Turnpike. It was 44 square miles of farmland, potato farms, egg farms, chicken farms, I should say, corn farms, until the 80s, when the area began to develop. So you can see that the population in 1950 was 4,000. See how it's increased 44 square miles. Build out, the anticipated population will be 96,000 to 100,000 people, and that's in about 2050, about 25 or so years from now. Why were there police sharpshooters on the top of buildings as we were holding these hearings? There was hot anger. The future of this community was being considered. What did residents want? There was a faction in the community. There were some elected officials who were looking to create a more urban type area, a suburban urban area. There are others who wanted to maintain a more suburban rural area. And eventually that is what took place. And when you have those types of discussions, there is hot anger, but there's another subtext to it. There was a lot of money on the line. Developers came in, bought farms on speculation. If you drive down the turnpike between exit 9 and exit 8A, you can see all along, not only in South Brunswick, but in East Brunswick, Monroe, etc. Warehouse development after warehouse development. And the logistics industry, which is the #1 job industry in our state. And I suggest that you review that data. It's all part of the work school boards is doing with our career focused learners. Have really driven development in that way. So the thought was, do we have these 12 to 14 story buildings which were proposed? What you see on the right is actually a farm which is permanently preserved next to the police station in the center of South Brunswick. That aerial photo was taken the year Derek Jeter retired. It's actually a corn maze that is in his image and other things related to him. It's a destination for a good part of Central New Jersey, including schools. Every time that we were planning things, there was a constant rumor of violence. There were threats to members of the township staff. There were threats to members of the planning board, the zoning board. And we knew that we needed to keep our volunteers as well as our staff and employees protected and safe. I ran for office for a few reasons. One of which was that there was a lack of integrity that I sensed from talking to friends and others. Most particular, the local planning board under the leadership of the elected officials rejected the academic planning reports of mayors of the planning department and the planning director, and they made life very uncomfortable for employees that were not towing the line. When I suspected a lot of things, including when a resident shared that he went to see his new home that was under construction, was ecstatic to see that all the approvals from the construction officials were in the window of the front door. He was ecstatic. He thought he was going to get in soon. Until he went in the house, he broke in through a basement window. Actually, he found that although the plumbing had been approved, there was not one pipe in the house. Although the electrical was approved, there was not one wire pulled through the house. So we already had some ideas. I began wearing wires for the FBI in 1988, and it didn't take too long for me to be approached for a variety of things. And the way it worked is that every meeting I had to wear a wire, and I had to tape the beginning of every phone call. If it was a personal phone call, I could end it. However, at the time, the Senate president was a former mayor of New Brunswick, John Lynch. Some of you may remember John Lynch. John Lynch was also not a friend of education at the time. And his aide was a gentleman by the name of Joe Samaro. I was called to a meeting on July 22nd. On the 21st, and as I did for all of my meetings, I spoke with Joe Vidovich, who was the FBI investigator, and he said that something's going to happen. I went into the local office of the senator in a strip mall, and I wasn't there more than 2 or 3 minutes before the tape, as it revealed, is on the screen. What I got is $500 donation from Ralph, he's the developer, Ralph Reeder, and John Lynch. Now I got it for you. I'd like you to take it and use it any way you want. It's cash, and it's just between the two of us. You know, he can help you with your political career. Do this, and there's more to come. Folks, I always consider myself to be pretty experienced. I will share with you, I was more than shocked when that took place. The saga continued. In essence, on the stand, Joe Samarone chose to take the hit. The rumor is that his family was reimbursed. However, 2 years later, the Senate President, John Lynch, was convicted for another deal in South Brunswick. And he spent about 6 years in federal prison. Joe Samarone spent about 3 years in federal prison. Lynch did not go to jail because of his actions with me. However, that investigation preceded what I did, and it concluded right after mine did. Some of the things that happened to me, there were 3 break-ins into my house. The first time they took my planning board briefcase and they spread the files on a dining room table. The second time they took my mayor's briefcase, spread the papers on the table. The third one was much more alarming. I was at a meeting on a Thursday evening, and my wife called me to thank me for making our bed and for the new negligee. Ladies and gentlemen, I do a lot of work around the house. If I made a bed, you'd know it. But I also didn't leave that negligee. It was left as a message for me to have an understanding that they were watching. My kids at that time were young. They were in elementary school. They were followed by private investigators, as was my wife. The personal attacks in the local press were significant. At the end of this, I will share this through Mike and Rob. They'll be able to send this presentation to you. I'm not going to go through some of these clippings, but at the end of this, there's about 10 or 15 slides of all different examples of that. There are also whisper campaigns to question my morals when it came to kids. What few people know is that I left education 10 years before I got into, I ran for office. I was very successful in the pharmaceutical medical device industry, working in Manhattan. However, when I learned that there was this whisper campaign, I was fortunate to go back to my old superintendent, my old principal. They offered me a job right away. They even gave me the 150 sick days that I left in the bank 10 years before when I left. It was more important for me to preserve my reputation than anything else. And it was also the best thing to do. Quite frankly, it was a great idea to leave education, but coming back, having that knowledge has really enhanced what I do. And one of the last things there were, anti-Italian spray paintings on my garage doors. Again, just so people knew that it was. But why did I run for office? My father was born right before the pandemic of 1917. Actually, his mom passed when he was the age of 3 from that pandemic. My family has a whole case study if you want to learn about the impacts of pandemics long-term to education, health, etc. However, he talked to me often as we went on these Sunday drives through Bergen County, showing me the swimming holes in areas of Lodi and Garfield, South Hackensack and Hackensack, where as a kid, he would go swimming and go fishing. They're all paved over. And as I moved to South Brunswick in the mid-70s, by the mid-80s, I was seeing that same type of thing. And I valued the farms. I valued the farms, but I also valued our farmers. I got to know them. I was teaching their kids. Having that respect for integrity, I knew that there needed to be trust developed. I also had 2 younger kids. I wanted my sons to grow up in a community like South Brunswick that was diverse in every respect, including land use. And quite bluntly, I have 2 of my grandkids live there now. They're both in elementary school. So what we tried to do was preserve farms and open space, which we did. We were the first town in Middlesex County to preserve farms, the second one to do open space. And they've been able to maintain a rural suburban climate by increasing ratables and by designating certain areas of the community to be rural, others to be suburban, others to have industrial use, etc. We also have one of the first Citizens for Independent Living. It's a nonprofit that was established in town. It has now 2 apartment houses for those with special needs that need some sort of a supervision, but can work. And most importantly, we also encouraged and honored diversity throughout that time. And what you see in that little photo at the bottom is the junction of Route 17 and Route 3 in Rutherford in 1960, when there was a dairy farm there in the shadows of what is now MetLife Stadium, when there were men and women trapping muskrats for a living in the Meadowlands. A very different time than today. But what I also saw were gifts, limos to New York City dinners, private planes to NASCAR. You can just see some of those things that were being some of the benefits, so to speak, of some of our elected officials. The worst thing that happened, though, was our township planner was penalized. His raises were withheld for 3 years, simply because he wrote a planning report that said that high development, high density housing didn't belong on wetlands or in a rural area. So it was a very beautiful. Carnegie Lake is on the the neighboring town of Princeton on the border. It's just a beautiful little community, and it continues to be that way. We made very specific plans about what would be where in order to have a master plan that reflected what the community wanted. And this was the reason for the bribe. In the 1930s, there was a paper road that was established, Route 92, that was going to connect Route 206 in the Montgomery area through Princeton, South Brunswick to what is now Exit 8A on the Turnpike. It's a road that we didn't want. One reason was it goes through wetland. Another reason is that area that you see right there is the southern part of the community. Of that 44 square miles, that's about 8 to 10 square miles of wetlands that have, and others that have been designated to remain rural. There were several different alignments. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of money obviously being exchanged. It was another one of those significant issues in the community where there was a lot of controversy, and there were certain individuals who wanted it. But what it was this: it was never going to be built. It was never going to be built because it was wetlands. Since it was wetlands, and we had just filed suit against the state of New Jersey to ensure that they enforce wetlands rulings. By having this property that was zoned rural residential, or 1 house per 2 acres, they were looking to have it increased, which would have had a significant number of additional homes. What it means is that by having the property rezoned, they could resell it to the Turnpike Authority and have an additional profit of $355 million over what it was worth. It just so happens that the attorney for the Turnpike Authority's brother was a real estate broker, and Senator Lynch was one of those who was advocating this. In a long story short, we were successful. We defeated it, and it does not exist. Instead, Route 133, which is a smaller road south of us that goes from Princeton indirectly to Heightstown and Exit 8 on the Turnpike, is what was built. However, in spring of 1991, there was another thing that John Lynch wanted. John Lynch wanted an Exit 8B on the New Jersey Turnpike, 1 mile north of Exit A. Unheard of to have an exit 1 mile apart. It was just simply to feed the industrial developers in that side of town. That was just not going to happen, and we were able to defeat that as well. Yeah. So what happened was there was a federal trial, and at the end of that testimony, as I mentioned, the gentleman Joe Samarone was found guilty, spent time in prison, as did John Lynch for another deal in our town. It's not uncommon, unfortunately. In September of 1991, the then owner of the Princeton Racquet Club, different owners today. On Saturday mornings, I would go have coffee there with the owner and with Tom Kane and with Brendan Byrne, who played tennis there every weekend. But that gentleman wanted his property rezoned. After $2,000, he was excuse me. After $20,000, the FBI paid him a visit, and he actually claimed that he gave me $30,000, and that I kept 10 grand. Well, what he didn't realize is that I was with the FBI every step of the way, and that was also addressed in the court system. So what we're really talking about is trust. You know, there's a lack of trust in government. There's lack of transparency that many people think. And yes, there's so much information that's out there that oftentimes people don't have the ability to discern what is truth and what's accurate. That's why it's so imperative that at the board table, the citizens of our communities hear the diverse opinions of boards. They need to have trust. They need to know the beliefs. So the questions become, how do we facilitate respectful meetings so that all are comfortable and can share their thoughts and ideas? And also, we must always bear in mind the Lighthouse Research Study, the Iowa School Boards Association, which has a significant report, a study going on for 20 years, which tells us that the behaviors of boards that contribute to student learning, student achievement, and effective governments. This is on the national level. You know, it just affirms what we already know, that there is a lot of concern at all levels of government with trust. And this is at the federal level, of course. And you can see that this is just in a graph form ending in 2020, where this studies ended, starting in about I think it was 1990. But you can see the decline or the ups and downs, but essentially a downward trend of trust in our government. So we need to proactively build trust with the community, with families. We need to ensure the public's heard. We need to effectively communicate throughout the year with stakeholders. We need to proactively prepare for and facilitate public input. We have to encourage and manage not only respectful behaviors, but also safety and security. So how do we build bridges or walls? We need to have humility. We need to be honest, credible, collegial, consistent, respectful, transparent, collaborative, non-judgment. We need to be effective listeners, and we have to be inclusive. We must be fair to all sides, regardless of what our opinions are on specific topics. Trust is when words and actions match. When words and actions match. What builds trust is integrity. What builds trust is when we use consistent, open, transparent decision-making processes that include the diverse voices of the community. If we keep changing our decision-making process based on the decision, we're not going to have trust because people won't know what to expect. Every citizen should feel that their voice is represented. That doesn't mean they get their way. What it means is that as part of the discussion, they hear someone voicing what they believe. They hear that the board itself is considering in their deliberations all points of view. One of the things I believe that we don't do as well at SBA is I believe that we don't encourage that diversity of discussion at the table. So in both of my districts that I worked in, we did not work on committees of the whole. However, committees did give full reports and the board did discuss those reports. It's so critical. Again, if not, that's when we hear these things. People say it's a backroom deal, it's a done deal. Oh, they're just going to do what they want. If we don't have consistent processes and if we don't have those public discussions, people have a reason to have concerns. Doesn't mean that they're justified in what they are, but it raises those questions, especially those who already have that tendency to not be trusting because of their own past experiences. We need to have opportunities for all to have those types of discussions. We also have to have meaningful information. That's that transparency piece. That's that sharing information. That's over communicating. We also have to consider that some of our citizens are marginalized. Whatever the definition we may think it is, we need to reach out to them. Transparency, efficiency, accountability. And again, there are other resources that are available for that. But how do we reduce the tensions? We must, first of all, at the board table, be inclusive of all viewpoints. We need to have control over our emotions. Be it an eye roll, a face, we really can't. We have to treat everyone with equal respect. You will hear this common theme. It's based on my own experiences and it's based on beyond that. Integrity, once lost, is hard to regain. When we don't communicate, we start to raise questions with others. And we need to genuinely collaborate. In North Brunswick, I was there several years. 5 out of 6 schools were failing. Many different processes were tried, nothing worked. The superintendent established a superintendent's achievement task force. It met for 3 years. It had three divisions, meaning this: there was a group focused on the high school, one in the middle school, one in the elementary school. Numerous changes were made. Programs were brought in. Having community members, parents, board members, educators, and even students on the high school committee contributed to that conversation. But most importantly, that large group with 3 sections represented that community. And when they made their report, people saw themselves up there. Again, collaborating doesn't mean you get your way. It means that you come together to discuss issues and focus on the issues and see what's best for the community. We need to have patience with each other, and we need to respect all, both people, beliefs, and ideas. Transparency, transparency, transparency. We need to have thick skins at the table and selective hearing. We don't always have to hear the negative comments. We don't have to respond to everything or anything at all. When I was brought in with my colleagues, we had a team of 3 that were reelected or elected that year. The first thing we did was to meet with our staff at the township. After the experience of the planning board director and others who were penalized for doing their job and doing it well, we just simply we said this: we needed them to advocate their positions, period. Didn't matter what we thought. In return for that, we needed them to have an understanding that there are other factors that impact the decision. It's not always the academic report. There are community factors. And by doing that, we began to have that township leadership come together. The next thing we did was Bob Hull, who was the director of planning, as a bipartisan town council and mayor. He was his back pay was given to him. He was brought up to where he was supposed to be, so he was not penalized in the long run for that work. To build trust, we have to humanize our board and district. We need to showcase personal stories about individuals served. Some of the things we tend to do is to only communicate when we need our communities or our families. We need to do it at all times. We also need to share the positive experiences that people have had with our board, our district, with the agency itself. And by communicating with plain language on our website in all written and spoken words. How do we build trusting relationships? Trust is earning the trust of all. Respect, patience, listening, transparency, inclusive, integrity, communicate, collaboration. Winston Churchill said it best: democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried. My advocating public participation, I am no longer party affiliated, but this was a column I wrote in those days, is to lobby and encourage not only the decision makers but the public to be involved, to express and share their voice. As a former mayor, this is what I believe. What do you believe? Do you believe in our representative democracy? It's imperative that those who represent the community listen to all voices of their community, proactively seek the beliefs and preferences of that community throughout the year, every year. I believe a responsibility of elected office is to be available to listen and understand the challenges that our constituencies have and positive and negatives of potential solutions. I sincerely believe in healthy public issue-based discussions at the board table prior to rendering a vote. Exemplifies to the community that their voices have been heard. However, once a decision has been made at that board, regardless of what one's personal vote is, we must all support, not undermine that decision. In my seeking office, I was honored to have been endorsed by 4 of 6 former GOP mayors. That said a lot to the community. Because what our goal, and when I say our, it's our team, including these former officials, was what's in the best interest of the community. On Thursday night, it's also virtual. I'll be speaking about our firearms safety task force at the Burlington county meeting. I encourage you to attend if you can, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the one recommendation in this report. The only recommendation in this report is for communities to consider establishing a diverse task force to address the issue of firearm safety in their community. Now, we have a lot of resources in that report. As a matter of fact, the resources are from all sides of the gun issue. The NRA, Moms Demand Action, Sandy Hook, and the sports shooting associations, go on and on, all have the same beliefs when it comes to gun safety. What I'm suggesting is that this is the model we believe works in any situation for the local government or for the local governing body or for the school board. By inviting people of diverse voices to come in and do the study and see what recommendations make best for that individual community. It's a change in thought for some, but it clearly works. We need to invite the most passionate people who come to those meetings. We need to engage them. When they're coming to, I'm not talking about people from out of town. When people in the community are coming forth, they want to participate. Again, I hope you understand why I repeat things. Consistent, transparent, inclusive decision-making processes. Making sure that we include the diverse voices of the outliers on all sides. We must ensure that everyone feels that their voice is being heard and all can contribute. It's also important that we have parent voices on district and school advisory committees, student voices, the citizen and non-parent voices on committees, as well as on advisory committees and budgets, all sorts of things. We also need to have a communications plan, not only for emergencies, but how are we going to continually keep our community updated, engage them, so that not only do they know we support them, but they will support our efforts. Maybe not our decisions, but our efforts. And that leads to the community engagement plan. I hope that all of our districts have parent and citizen academies where families learn. And if you're in a community that is developing under the New Jersey land use laws, school boards have a mayor can appoint a school board rep to a planning board. That person represents the Board of Education, meaning when they cast a vote, it's not casting their vote, it's casting the vote that is representative of the school district. It's very effective, especially with towns that are growing, in order to plan for future facility needs. Build trust, demonstrate inclusivity, model best public behaviors at the podium, anticipate public portion objections, have a sign-in sheet for public comment for speakers, do not respond to speakers' comments, only ask clarifying questions, never embarrass anybody, model extraordinary respect and patience with the public, with the staff, and with the knowledge of the full board. When there are members of the public who come to speak every week or at every meeting, having the same comments. It's helpful if a board gets together and decides who of us is best to contact the speaker, not to lobby the speaker. The goal is to listen, to hear their concerns, listen to their input. If nothing else, the next time that person comes to the podium, whoever spoke with them can say, it was a pleasure to have a conversation with you, in order to have a further understanding. That sends a strong message to the community that you are actively engaging with the community, that you truly want to hear those concerns. At a 3-minute session at a public podium, at the public portion, or whatever your time limit is, we're never going to find out exactly what those individuals think. Rather than they'll continue coming up, but the difference is they will know, the public will know, and the board will know that they've had an understanding of what that person's concerns are. Patience, patience, patience. We can't have emotional responses. We should never raise our voices. We have to be the adult in the room. We also have to manage proper decorum. We shouldn't be talking over the audience, individual speakers, and they shouldn't either. And it's okay to be quiet while waiting for the room to be quiet. We don't have to talk if other people are talking. But by doing so, we're ensuring that all who desire to speak can, and that we are calmly and quietly, firmly managing out of behavior, out of order behaviors. We have to be the calming influence. We always need to protect the process. Remember, this is a democratic process. You've heard me speak too many times already about decision making. We also have to ensure that every speaker feels they are listened to with an open mind. Every person on the dais must be aware of their facial expressions, their body language. It should affirm that the board is listening, is attentive and professional. Body language that shows frustration with certain commentary or outright boredom or yawning, it will quickly escalate tensions in the room. We really must be aware of our facial expressions. That nonverbal communication will give every bit of information. Again, community parent formal participation. Okay, what are the processes? What can we do? We should be having those conversations ahead of time and identifying the ways that we can do it. And again, we need to ensure that everyone feels, families, community, parents, whomever, that their viewpoints are represented in every decision. And we should be visiting them in their homes. I remember going around right before the April elections when we were trying to get budgets passed in both North and South Brunswick. We went to the firehouses, we went to the homeowners associations, we went to the senior citizens groups, the faith groups. You can see the list there. Who else in your community? Just because we don't have an election doesn't mean that we shouldn't be out there going to those places to hear and to listen to those concerns, to be proactive and to reduce those tensions. We need to communicate with intent. It should be interactive. We need to create ways. It used to be easy when we had local newspapers. They're not around anymore. We have to be creative on our own. And that means including those outliers. And it means by having virtual hard copy district newsletters, using reverse dialing messages, having regular meetings with our key communicators to hear about what's happening in the community. Having be it the superintendent or the district leadership, having an open community town hall meetings at times convenient for working parents to meet with the leadership so that they can just have an open agenda without having other lobbying, so to speak. Those neighborhood coffees we used to have, having specific surveys, being visible and accessible at school and community events. Those parent academies, not only with topics, but also with having representation, just as we had here tonight from our state association. Those little greetings mean a lot to people. Our parent academies, the Friday folders, electronic and traditional, P to 12, so that we're keeping our families updated. That social media presence, just those quick things, on Facebook, on whatever, all the other X or whatever they are. And using, again, with releases, media releases, having YouTube videos of our kids doing stuff, district uptakes, FAQs. We start to think of all the questions we have at different times of year. That's the perfect time to do it. We also have to be very specific with our communication plans when we have events that we didn't plan for, those rough ones. I've been through too many lockdowns in my career. My very first lockdown was for a high school of 3,000 kids. 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, it was at 10 o'clock, but a kid reported somebody else had a gun. At 10 o'clock, when this all went down, we informed parents, our police chief and our superintendent and mayor were on the local cable TV channel, but we didn't do one thing. We didn't anticipate that there was a child care class in that high school consisted of 2, 3, and 4-year-olds, 20 of them. They were locked down. We eventually had a separate waiting area for all parents, but especially those parents. Imagine having a 2-year-old in a lockdown in a high school. Those are the things that we need to be aware of. And that also is, we need to have separate briefing locations for families so that the press is someplace else. We also need to ensure that at public hearings, we address needs privately. An example is redistricting is difficult in school lines. The last time we did it in North Brunswick, the Home News Tribune actually gave the district an editorial accolade. What we decided to do was have that hearing. However, when there are individual questions, those individuals were asked to come up to the front of the room, over to the side, and to speak with the HR director, who took down a name, address, number, so that there are individual conversations to address those individual needs. Again, it's about personal attention. Since it's difficult to have that traditional electronic press to cover your community, whatever press is there, building relationships is important. If you can get them to come to a press conference or a press briefing, if not a press briefing, even a release, any way that we can be creative, but building those relationships is what gets the interest. And we need to cultivate relationships, returning phone calls, speaking on the record, speaking on background. And if you have a trust in a reporter, speaking off the record. But the main thing is to always be truthful. It's better to not say anything. Again, at public meetings, be aware of expressions, maintain eye contact, no texting or reading other materials, don't escalate, don't raise your voice, do not respond to personal attacks or disrespectful comments, and we can have selective hearing. We don't have to hear everything. The Lighthouse study I referenced earlier on, have a high vision of expectations for student achievement, have strong shared beliefs, accountability, collaborative relationships with the staff and the community, a strong communication structure, data savvy, align resources to meet goals, lead as a united team with a superintendent with strong collaboration and mutual trust, embrace learning together. There's a lot more information, but those are some that I asked you to consider. And as we conclude, again, our behaviors, the way our demeanor, and it's difficult being a public servant. It's difficult having elective office. There's a lot more pressure put upon you, and the expectations are higher in terms of what we do, what we say, and how we act. Acting with humility, being honest, credible, collegial, consistent, respectful, transparent, collaborative, non-judgmental, an effective listener, and being inclusive to all sides are critical ways to do it. In my term in office, after 3 years, I chose to not run for re-election. It was a lot of stress on my world and my life. And I still continued wearing wires for 4 years after I was elected because I served on the planning board and was approached. But we did restore public trust. Gifts stopped. I was in office 24 hours before I had cases of beer from the local distributor on my desk, or rather on my front porch. Flowers from others, and all that went to the Senior Citizen Center. But we need to be conscious of it. The transparency, the business of the people must be done in public. We did preserve farms, we preserved open space. There's continued to be a Board of Ed member on the planning board in that town. We initiated a charter study, and the government was changed because it went from 14,000 people to 50,000 people. We reduced high density projects, and we met all Mount Laurel obligations by interspersing affordable housing in every project. There were no rich projects and no projects in town. Everything had a diverse type of housing structure. We also were able to fund the first Veterans Memorial. Our municipal alliance was recognized. It was the first municipal alliance in the state of New Jersey, recognized so by the governor at the time. We defeated those buildings, defeated 92. We sued the state of New Jersey, so they now continue to enforce the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers wetlands delineation maps. And we defeated an exit on the turnpike that would have destroyed farmland in our community. Desmond Tutu said it best: don't raise your voice, improve your argument. I appreciate your attention tonight. I'm not going to go through these. As I said, these will be emailed to you. These are just some of the many artifacts from that time period, which reflect, the difficulty of leading in turbulent times.
Vince, let me thank you for this wonderful presentation, but I do have a question.
Sure.
You stress, listen, listen, listen. And through my business life, I listened and I had a mission to solve everybody's problem. But we're trained, being on the Board of Education, that we stay in a fine line. So I was elected president in 2020, pre-COVID, or beginning of COVID. And for 3 years, I was inundated with emails. So the only thing I could do was to respond to who sent it to me, say, I forwarded your email to the proper party. And the only, in other words, to my superintendent, for example, because I wanted the people to, I was responding, I was listening, but really our hands are tied. We can't take action as a board member. So, do you have any suggestions?
Well, the same is true on the municipal level. Same is true on the municipal level. Listening doesn't mean doing. Listening is responding in that I understand. I heard you. I'll bring it to the board, or you may want to do this. It's never making a commitment to do any action ever. That's not within the power of on the governing body or on the Board of Ed. And the other thing is that on the municipal side, there's a town manager, administrator. On the board side, there's a superintendent. So it's making those referrals and honoring the chain of command as well, wherever it may fall on that chain. But oftentimes people just want someone who's going to acknowledge that they were heard. And very few people are coming to the podium that have all sorts of ideas or feelings. Those who come to the podium have a greater interest, a greater goal.
Michael makes an excellent point. In our Board of Education, we came up with a template, email template for communicating with community members, because oftentimes we'll be approached, whether it's in a supermarket or whether it's at an event, and we're there just to make sure that the school systems run well. We don't run the school system. Exactly. And like you said, Vince, we can't act individually. And so this template just basically, when someone has a serious concern, we acknowledge them, we hear them, and then basically say, by copy of this email, you pass it on to the superintendent, who's going to hopefully resolve this for you. And there you have it. But Mike makes an excellent point, and as new school board members, the trap is they want you to reply individually, and that's the trap. Don't.
And that's also why, when I say we're going to contact someone at the podium, it's with the full knowledge of the entire board.
Right.
There should never be a surprise. One of the things that overall society gets trapped into is that we kind of tend to only communicate with those who agree with us sometimes. We have an elected responsibility. We've been empowered by our community to represent everybody. And to do exactly which I applaud your board for doing that. I encourage other boards to do the same thing. It's that balance. We've heard you. I can't do anything, but we will ensure that the right person hears it.
I just want to add 10 seconds on that. What Vincent said, that it's more people, they want to make sure that they are heard, or that you have to listen. So if you watch any of our Ridgewood Board of Education meeting, our new superintendent, he does this very well. He summarizes the public comment that, let me just make sure that I understand your question or your query. This is what you wanted to say. And then he says, okay, I'll look into it and we'll get back to you. So just that act of acknowledging and summarizing that public comment, people leave that meeting thinking they were heard.
Exactly. Terrific process.
There was one question someone asked, Vince. It was, is the board allowed to send a climate survey out to district parents?
Let me do it this way. Yes, that's the short answer, but the bigger answer is this. In the districts that I've worked in, on an annual basis, usually at both districts, I did in the spring. Some do it in the fall. I know I prefer the spring, only because I think we get more real answers. There are climate surveys. It's the same climate survey that's done for all staff. It's done anonymously, and then on a random basis, there are students that are identified and families that are identified. I think including the community is a terrific idea. I'm not sure how to get that database. I guess every community would be different, but by having a random a sample, that's done on an annual basis in many districts.
I have one other question, if I may. You talked about the thick skin.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I always have a habit in my life, in my business life, is I always wore my emotions on my sleeve. All right, in other words, I've been probably one of the most dangerous, I'm being funny, one of the most dangerous places in the world was during the COVID pandemic, waiting online in ShopRite for cold cuts when 3 residents come over with their fingers in your face and call you out for the mask mandate. I upheld a HIB finding, and I'm in my little restaurant in my town, and the offender's parents came circling my table. Where is the line? Because in the old days, I would have acted differently. We sat there, poker faced, but you really feel marginalized. It's out of the realm of the Board of Education. Eating in a restaurant is real life, but I guess our responsibility continues outside of the Board of Education. So I just wanted to share that.
I understand that. When I was in office, I stopped shopping in town. And unfortunately, I coached my kids' soccer games, so parents there, I'm in the field, I'm coaching now, and then boy, did I get off that field pretty quickly.
Vince, real quick, follow up on that. She said, on the survey again, is the survey sent by the Board of Ed or the superintendent to the staff and selected families? And then what would be a decent sample size be in your opinion?
First, it's sent by the district itself. So it's not necessarily, I can't speak to if the board itself can or cannot. I really don't know that. I'm more speaking from the process itself. I will also share with you that through the DOE, there are samples of surveys that you can use. There's another resource, a former professor at Rutgers who went out to Ohio State, whose name is escaping me, and it'll come back. Has been using developed some significant surveys. I think there's what was the second part of the question? Oh, sample size.
Sample size.
Yeah, I'm not the person to ask that. I'm the end user. I relied on my data people in the district to do all those type of determinations. So I'm not qualified to answer that. If you send me an email, I can with your district size, I can get that information from some of my people, or just ask in house, of course.
All right, Rob, do we have anything in the chat?
All right, keep not being able to unmute. Nope, that's it.
All right, anyway, does anybody else have any other questions for Vince?
I just want to add one more.
Thank you, Vince.
point.
I always love to hear your story as the lawyer here. Fascinating, and it's every time I hear it, it's like something else resonates. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to add, thank you. It was there were a lot of good information. I just want to add one thing that recently I have read scientific reports that empathy is being replaced by compassion. And so where you mentioned 13 essential skills for students. So you may want to like maybe when next time you have time, if you can guide us if like compassion is more powerful than empathy. Because I've read some.
I'm going to suggest that both are important. They both have a different role. Empathy is understanding somebody else's role. Compassion is having that feeling for their state. So I'm going to suggest that both.
Right. So empathy is understanding somebody's pain, but compassion is understanding somebody's pain and trying to help them.
Yeah.
And when you try to help them, then you feel good in that case.
Yeah. But I'm not disagreeing with you, but they're just at different levels of what people can do, or more importantly, that overall structure.
Right.
Good. I apologize for my crazy dog. All right, Vince, thank you very much and for your presentation. It's always a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you in Trenton.
Thank you.
Anyway, as we continue, I'm going to shoot her. No, not really. All right, I'd like to call upon NJSBA County Activities Coordinator Robert Chera, and he'll give us an update on our Unsung Heroes celebration, which will take place on March 5th, 2024. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. I'll be quick. As you guys probably have seen in past years, and you all board members will receive an invitation to this year's award ceremony next Monday. It will be Tuesday, March 5th at Teaneck High School. It will begin at 6:30. Check-in will be at 6 p.m. And what Unsung Heroes is for anyone new, Unsung Heroes is students who make outstanding contributions to their schools and communities, but are sometimes overlooked in traditional student recognition programs. So all high school, so it's a 12th grader from every high school, all high schools were administration and staff were asked to submit a name. The deadline was yesterday for Bergen County, and I sent kind of a SOS to the Bergen County Board last week because there was only about, I think there was 10 in last Wednesday, and by Friday we had 20 in. Well, as of today, we have 46 in, which is great. So the Bergen County, your superintendents and principals really have been working hard. Last year we had 43 students total, so we're already over the 2023 numbers. But I'm going to put in the chat, and just if you are from any of these boards, I've given these superintendents and principals until this Friday to get them in, because we want to make sure to be able to highlight every high school that we can in Bergen County. So the schools are Bergen Arts and Science Charter School, Brownstone, New Bridges, and Visions from Bergen County Special Services, Becton Regional, Garfield, Hasbrook Heights, Northern Highlands, Paramus, Park Ridge, Ridgewood, Teaneck, Tenafly, and Wallington. So if you're from any of those districts, and I just put it in the chat, no, Fort Lee, she got it in today.
She did? Okay,
yep.
thanks. I've been pressing them.
Yep.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you. So if you are from any of those districts, and then we hope that as many of you as possible can come and attend the award ceremony. And like I said, the invite will go out on Monday to every board member in Bergen County. Thank you, Mike.
All right, Rob, thank you very much. And just to piggyback on what Rob said, I see my good friend Bruce Young is on the chat. Bruce, how about reaching out to Becton for their unsung hero and the people in Karlstad? We would appreciate that. All right, lastly, but definitely not least, I'd like to call upon NJSBA Field Services Representative Matt Lee with his update. Matt?
Thank you, Mike. Realizing I am the last thing between you guys and your footy pajamas, I will make this quick. A couple of things I wanted to draw your attention to, both from a program perspective and also from an administrative perspective. I'll start with the programs. Many of you know that we run 2 weekend programs for Governance 1, new board member orientation, the next of which is coming up in late February, 23 to 25. That is actually full. So we're glad to see that new board members are taking that opportunity to gather with other new board members and some of our group leaders who bring lots of expertise to that program, and getting themselves oriented in their new role. And of course, making sure that they are compliant with the new 90-day regulation for attending their first mandatory training. In addition, right around the corner is a live virtual rendition of Governance 1, which will take place on March 5, 6, and 7. That is once again online. And just a word of advice there, if you don't attend all 3 of those meetings, you will not get credit for having attended that. So make sure you clear your schedule and be ready to sign on for all 3 nights. Again, that's March 5th, 6th, and 7th. Another opportunity coming up, which was really welcome news for folks who are pursuing individual member certification. We have a statewide regional program coming up on April 19th, which is something brand new for us, a women's leadership conference. And I would encourage anybody who has an interest in that to sign up for it. And again, a great way to earn your credits for individual certifications. The last 2 things I wanted to talk about have a little bit of a tie-in together. The first is that on May 18th will be our next delegate assembly. And if you haven't on your board designated your NJSBA delegate, you should do so, and do so also in the census. It's very important that your business administrator board secretary ensure that your census records are up to date, especially as it relates to the DA, so that the person who is representing your board at that event will get all the proper materials prior. And the last piece, which is also census related, is just today, they opened up the superintendent evaluation portal. And that will allow your superintendent to go in and begin the evaluation process by entering their goals and their self-assessment of their progress against those goals. the important component of that may not be quite as prevalent in board members' minds is that if the census is not up to date, using the board leadership designations, the board president being identified as the key person in receiving the evaluation documents, will have a hitch in that as we start to process through. So make sure that your board secretary has updated the information in the census so that your CSA evaluation goes smoothly. It's not unusual that with all the things going on in the spring, boards kind of start to deal with this in earnest in the late spring. And having all those pieces in place beforehand will make the process go much more smoothly. So thank you for your time, Mike. I appreciate it. And that concludes my report.
All right, Matt, thank you very much. Rob, you had something else?
Yes, I'm sorry. One more thing to add on to what Matt just said, because I got some additional information today. Matt talked about the women's conference, which will be in person only in Mercer County. There's also going to be, and they're not on the website yet, and hopefully by the end of the week they will be, there's going to be 3 regional leadership conferences across the state. The first one's going to be Saturday, March 2nd, which will be in Mercer County. The second one's going to be Saturday, March 16th, which will be in Camden County. And the last one's going to be Friday, April 12th in the north, and that will be at Morris County College of Morris. And there will be a hybrid portion. So if you are working towards your trainings and you need those 2 regional conferences that have not been on the website all year, be on the lookout for those because each one will count as a separate one.
All right, thank you, Rob. All right, just before we close, I'd just like to ask our executive committee to stay on for a couple of minutes. We have something to take up. And anyway, this concludes our program. I would like to thank Vince DeLucia for a great program. Of course, Rob, always you're there in helping us. But to piggyback on what Rob said, please make sure your districts have registered your unsung hero, which again will be held in person on March 5th, 2024, 5:30 p.m. at Teaneck High School. So anyway, good night, everybody, and thank you and travel safe.
Good night, Michael.
Good night.